What I'd really like to just start with is a brief introduction for why this session. And I think that we've lost a huge number of restaurants over this period, but that has meant that there's an opportunity for new openings in the coming months, and for chefs who maybe have found that they are no longer with their previous employer and may be thinking how to reopen perhaps their own business following the pandemic. So this session is really an opportunity for chefs to get to know how you started, and with Pascal, obviously how you're supporting the chefs that have started with you. And I'd love to just get each of you to introduce yourself and how you got started. So perhaps if we could start with Imad, and Imad, if you could just tell us all how you got started, would be great.
How to get started in food business? It started all together from 1999 in Syria. I had my first takeaway small restaurant, and then in 2006 I had my second restaurant. 2009, third and largest one, actually the biggest one. It was somewhere between 160 to 180 cover. Two of them opened for 24 hours. And we had the happy days until the March 2012, where two of my restaurants being bombed, and I didn't have an access to the third one within 6 days. Actually, I lost 3 restaurants, 5 juice bars, coffee shops, 2 houses, 2 cars in 6 days. Until 2015, when I shifted to the UK. Start again in March 2017 with my first pop-up restaurant in Columbia Road. It wasn't easy, but it's not as hard as first time. Second time is much easier. Since then, we had a lot of pop-up restaurants, supper clubs in London, UK, and in Europe, actually. And I had my catering company. Since then, I do weddings, parties, stuff like this. Until now, I have my Imad Syrian Kitchen permanent location in Carnaby Street.
Fantastic! Thank you very much,
Thank
Imad.
you very much.
I'm very much looking forward to joining you in your new permanent location once in May. Eddie, do you want to explain kind of how you started?
Yeah, sure. So my background was in restaurants as a chef, but I focus on plant-based food, and I got to this point where I started out in restaurants a little over 15 years ago, and I got to the stage where a few years ago, it's starting to be a bit different now, but I'd sort of run out of places to go to if I wanted to keep learning and progressing. You sort of hit a ceiling. So I started working as a consultant a bit at the time, which was great. Really enjoyed that. Focused on the sort of modern side of new technologies and stuff coming into the kitchen, but it's not cooking for people, and that's what I really missed. So as a bit of a side project, I started up what at the time I called a supper club, and that gradually took over everything else that I was doing and became more and more like a restaurant, because that's where my background was from, and till it became what it is now, which is a 12 to 14 course tasting menu, 4 nights a week, very much in the style of a very, very tiny little tasting menu restaurant. And that's pretty much where I am now, save the months closed over the pandemic.
I think it reminds me quite a lot what you do. I think Simon Rogan has, is it Owlis? Where it's like a tiny little seat.
Mm.
Seat, I think 8 people get in there, and it's a very much a kind of, you know, diners with the chefs.
Yeah, a sort of a chef's table like experience, and the big inspiration for me is a fellow chef in the Northwest, Mark Wilkinson, who has a small restaurant called Fresh, which has got 1 Michelin star, but is very unique in that he is alone in the kitchen, just him cooking for 8 to 10 guests a night. And when I first went to eat there and spoke to him, that was the first time that I was like, oh, so someone can do food to this level on their own. And that suddenly, that was really eye-opening to me, the idea that actually there's quite a lot you can do without a huge team, without a massive space.
Yeah, I think that's such a good point. When you're working in a restaurant, you think you rely so much on the team, which you do at that scale, but actually, you know, there's so much you can do by yourself. And that leads me on very nicely to what Pascal is doing, because in Street Cube, it's very much kind of single chefs, perhaps with one partner, isn't it, Pascal? You get involved.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. I took a long, hard look at the food system after my daughter was born with celiac disease 12 years ago, and as a chef myself, you know, I've always been very, you know, keen to understand, you know, how chefs can play a role in health. And you know, my best friend, fellow chef that I trained with, has got type 1 diabetes. My father's got type 2. My mum's got diverticulosis, and the chef that trained me when I was a kid died of a diet-related health condition, you know, 2 years ago. And so I think we all know someone who has some kind of intolerance to something or other, or IBS, or, you know, some kind of autoimmune related food health condition, be it an allergy or something more serious. But there is something fundamentally wrong in the food system. And the more I looked into it, the more I began to understand and realize that actually it's not just a little bit broken, it's really screwed. You know, and the food system is responsible for more than 45% of all greenhouse gas emissions. You know, the way we consume, the way we transport food around the world with efficiency, but then that is wasted as well. You know, 60% of all food that's transported is wasted. And of course, with climate change and the effect of the further effects of climate change are going to affect a large proportion of, you know, the food growing areas of the world. And I mean, these are just some of the small problems. I mean, you know, relating to me personally, my family, my daughter, it was like, well, what is causing celiac disease? What is causing these issues with allergies? And, you know, it's not right that someone should take a bite of a sandwich and then die, you know, if they haven't got an EpiPen, or, you know, anaphylaxis is not just, you know, random, you know, it's a real issue. So the more you look into the food system and the more you try to understand, well, what chemicals are playing a part in the production of food, what systems are playing a part in the destruction of the soil, how important is the soil in with regards to the climate and with regards to carbon. You know, there's a lot of talk at the moment about reaching a zero carbon or net zero carbon system. You know, we've got to achieve that by 2050. It's enshrined in law. Now we have to change, not just for the good of the planet, but for the good of our own health and our family's health and our children, and et cetera, et cetera. So that's what I started to look at, you know, 12 years ago. And it took me ages to get the idea off the ground. But I realized that our high streets are really, you know, partly to blame, because the cost of real estate was just going up and up and up and up. And you know, where our city centers and our high streets are sacred. You know, they're sort of the community spaces where we all come to gather and shop. And, you know, traditionally we used to go to a market and buy our things at the market and trade. But now these things have been taken over by huge chains, you know, global restaurant chains, fast food restaurants, and our high streets are now no longer the sort of the happy places that they once were. And I thought, well, I looked at a lot of the menus in the high streets and I thought, well, everything's pretty much the same. It's kind of it's either junk food or it's kebabs or it's fish and chips or whatever. And you look at most menus and you think, well, especially in a chain restaurant, a new chain pops up and you think, well, this is nothing new, fish and chips, curry, whatever. And it's the same wherever you go. So with some exceptions, of course, but when you look more into the sort of chain mentality, you realize that, well, we are creating a monocrop society, monocrop system, whereby, one massive chain, for instance, that's got 10,000 restaurants will use one particular type of potato, the russet Burbank, and all other crops are no good for that particular restaurant. So, that's affecting biodiversity as well. And so there's so many nuances, so many things that are coming out of an industrial food system, including the destruction of the soil. And that's something that was really important to me, because I know that regions are very important, because we've got more than 400 different soil types in the UK, but we use probably about 3 of them or 4 of them to grow the majority of our food. But that soil is critical, to our health and the health of the climate. Anyway, long story short, so I realized that really to try and fix the system, we need to empower independent chefs to be able to open their own restaurants and do away with some of these chains, and empower chefs to sort of work for themselves, where they're motivated and incentivized to operate their own business, and they're rewarded as well with the quality that they can produce by the customers coming back time and time again. And so whilst looking at all these factors and all the problems with the industrial food system and the climate change and public health, I needed to put some parameters in, to try and improve the food system. So we, looked at sort of doing a way in which I could put a kitchen in the middle of a high footfall city centre that was zero carbon, and that the principles were based on a zero carbon food system. So I looked at the shipping container. I know it's been done, and please don't think, oh, well, this is Box Park Part 2. It ain't. The only similarity to Box Park is that we use metal containers. That's it. That's where the similarity stops. I use the 10-foot cubes and I turn them into professional solar-powered kitchens. Okay, they're a cube, hence the street cube. So they've got solar panels on the roof. They've got living walls on the side. The regenerative, the zero carbon are making second life use out of something that would have been, discarded. So these containers have done, hundreds of thousands of miles around the world, transporting out of season goods and foods, a lot of stuff also including plastic that ends up in landfill. Now I've given them a second life, and I'm turning them to sustainable zero carbon food kitchens that can open in the street. Now I thought, well, how do we get people to engage with food that is healthier for them? Because they go to the high street and they're confronted with little choice. It's either chips or fried or this, that, and the other. So, well, it's to put the kitchen in the middle of the high street, basically. Come and interact with this cube. And I know that Deliveroo and other places have developed these dark kitchens, where you'll see it on the electronic menu, but that's the only place you'll see it. You won't see it in the high street because it's tucked away behind some industrial estate somewhere. I didn't want to do that. I mean, I wanted to have a kitchen where people could come and interact directly with the chef, and where that chef was versed and passionate about sustainability and about public health. So really, I wanted to take that 10-foot shipping container model and give it hatches that can open up to the street, where the chef inside has got that professional kitchen, stainless steel extraction, stainless steel worktops, everything electric, water, hygiene, everything the chef needs to operate and then sell food. And that's exactly what we did. So we built the first one in 2018. And when we placed the first one in Wandsworth at the start of 2019, Raymond Blanc came to the opening. His son and I worked together in developing Street Cube. And then we put another one in about 3 months later, and then we put another one in. So we've got 3 Street Cubes now in Wandsworth. And a few other things. We got a horse box there as well, but we've also got about a dozen gazebos now, because it started to attract a lot of people, a lot of attention. And as I was saying to Dominique before this chat started, that I also wanted to bring suppliers into the mix as well. So local farmers and local producers of organic seasonal produce can come to this space as well, and to provide the chefs with ingredients that the chefs can cook, but also to sell ingredients direct to the public. So now we've got that whole piazza. It's the size of a tennis court in front of Southside Shopping Centre in Wandsworth. We've kind of taken over the whole space now. I think before, Dominique, when you came, there was a couple of cubes there. And now we've got the whole space, which I'm pleased about. And so that's about it. I've kind of drifted off the question. I can't remember what it was.
Don't worry, Pascal. That was a really interesting background to Street Cube. And I actually asked a number of the questions that I wanted to pose to Imad and Eddie. One of which is around, you mentioned dark kitchens. You were talking about street food. I know Imad has worked with pop-ups and also permanent locations as well. Imad, perhaps for you to start with, what do you think are the pros and cons of all of those different aspects or different ways of setting up?
Sorry, come again?
What do you think are the pros and cons, the advantages and disadvantages of the different ways of setting up?
To be honest, I don't know, but I'm going to talk about my personal experience because I'm coming from totally different world. It's been really difficult to get in the food business straight away, just because I have no idea about what's going on over here. And honestly, so the pop-up restaurant was really great idea at the time, and the supper clubs was really good idea at the time, just because I wanna discover this market over here and not jump to something like totally unfamiliar for me. So yeah, so this is where.
What were the benefits of the supper club? Because I noticed both you and Eddie started with the supper club. Why was that your chosen method of starting?
For me, to be honest, first of all, just to know what is, I'm not serving Syrian food to Syrian people. Otherwise, I would definitely know what they like and what they want from me. I'm serving Syrian food for non-Syrian people and for a market who I've never been in. Like, for example, in my first pop-up, in my first supper club in Colombia, I served a delicious dish called kibbeh Lebanese, which is a very hard to do. It's a cooked yogurt with different kind of lamb, onion and stuff. It's really difficult to do. It's taking a lot of time to prep. I end up eating it with my family for 1 week just because no one was willing to touch it. I learned from my mistakes, and this is the whole idea about having supper clubs. Know the market more, know what is the audience would prefer, and to develop like, I don't know how to explain it, but to meet this audience, to know, to listen to them, know what they do like from our food, what they don't dislike, the amount of spices we can use, and not to be scared of using it, what kind of spices they do like. And I think there is a memory in spices, and taste got a memory in our heads. Sometimes, believe me, there is a lot of Syrian dishes where Syrians highly look at it, but other people will not accept it just because it's not in their memories. It's not part of them. And some of the biggest lessons I learned of it is start with everything and start to take things out of the menu. And keep it simple, to be honest. It doesn't really need to be I don't know how to explain it, to be honest, but the way we were serving food in Damascus, it will have a huge failure over here. You need to deliver this dishes and plates to meet the audience over here. And just want to say one thing about Pascal was saying about all of this allergy and
Exercise.
exactly. This is why I think we don't face these problems in the Middle East. Just because what we use is what is always there and what it's naturally there. You know what I mean? We don't, our tomatoes grow for like 20 minutes and it's in your kitchen, sometimes less than 20 minutes to be in your kitchen. From the farm to your kitchen, it doesn't really need to be shipped overseas. Or this is why my first time hearing of something gluten-free was in London. I never heard of it in Syria. I don't know anyone in Syria got all of these allergies, or at least most of them. I heard about it in here, not in Syria, not in anywhere else. So yeah, I totally agree.
Very, very interesting, Imad. I think one of the points that you raised is about experimentation.
Yeah.
Which I think is so important when you're starting up, not to assume that people are going to really like your what you're producing.
Yeah.
Everyone has a different taste, flavor, and what they're interested in. And the concept of the supper club and keeping things small and being directly connected with your customer helps with that experimentation. So, for example, if you're in a dark kitchen, you don't have the same customer interaction to be able to tell how they're responding to the food. You may have stats though from what people are buying, but it's a slightly different format. And I was wondering, Eddie, from your perspective, how have you utilized that experimentation in starting your concept and figuring out what people really liked and what didn't work so well?
Yeah, well, the big advantage for me of starting with something that was less formal, like a supper club setup, as it was when I started, it was a group of people all sat around one table, and that gave me quite a decent amount of time to try out what I wanted to do, figure out what works and what doesn't. I no longer refer to it as a supper club. I call it an underground restaurant, in part because the price point is now fairly high for something in that range. It's £75 a head. It's very much more structured now, but that starting off point let me do things like I started with a much shorter menu because I thought that's what people would want. They're not going to want to come and have me do what I kind of really want to do. I sort of watered it down, and it became quickly obvious that actually people preferred it. The more I did what I really wanted to do, the more restaurant-y, the more chefy I kind of was, the more I followed what I'm best at, really. That seemed to sync up and work with people better. But just having that scope, that time to figure stuff out. If I'd launched as an actual bricks and mortar restaurant, then I wouldn't have had that first 2 years where I figured out what worked, how I wanted the menu to feel and flow as a whole. The fact that I'm cooking and serving the food as well, which was initially, well, is still really by necessity, but that as a chef coming from the back of house side of things is such a new set of things to learn as well. It's a whole new skill set in terms of serving and dealing with the customers, but also in terms of figuring out how you do 12 courses for 8 people and balance your time between the kitchen and coming out and seeing the guests and timing all that stuff out. And I could not have launched with 12 courses ready to go at that price, because it would have been chaos and people would have been complaining, and it would have, so starting more informal and then getting it to the stage where now I use a restaurant booking reservation system and everyone gets a separate table, and it's there's quite a long waiting list to book in and things, and that now I feel I have the confidence with what I'm doing there, in part because I know I've built to it. Like, I've not just dropped myself in saying I'm worth this much. I'm, this is it's organically got to that point. You're not picking a figure out of the air in terms of price. You're not picking you're not trying to claim to be exclusive in a way that you haven't earned the right to be. You've just gradually got to the point of doing what you're doing.
I think that also the way you started, you kind of gave yourself the permission to be bold and experimental, because you didn't have you hadn't invested loads in a high rent, for example.
No.
It's kind of about keeping your starting costs low, while you recognize that, at least to start with, you're going to have to figure out whether what you're doing is right, and adjust and learn and be experimental.
Yeah, absolutely. The things like the Rotovac behind me that I use now for making the gin, or the fancy plates and stuff that I have, like, none of this, I had none of that when I started. All of that was stuff where down the line I could go, this is what's working, this is what I want to push further with, this is what I want, this is what I'm excited about, and that's what I want to pursue, and know that works.
Where's your place?
I'm in Manchester, in the suburbs of Manchester.
Cool.
Yeah, it's a nice spot for it. Close enough to a city that you have enough people on your doorstep, but not right in the centre of the city. And
is it like in Salford?
No, Whalley Range, which is just south of the city.
Okay, cool.
Or just south of the city centre.
And Imad, I was just wanting to pick up on just a comment, just an observation, because I know that you said about the gluten intolerances, and you're very right. I mean, gluten does not affect everybody, but just to sort of flesh out what we were talking about earlier on, and about the use of pesticides, because it's the overuse of pesticides which is destroying the soil. And the soil is our biggest carbon sink. So if we continue to destroy the soil, then we continue to release CO2 into the atmosphere. So there's a double problem, because it uses a lot of CO2 to make the chemicals and the pesticides. And then a lot of CO2 is released when we use those chemicals and pesticides in the soil. But Syria is in fact 79th on the global list of pesticide users. That's out of 160 countries. Last year, Syria used more than 1,422 tons of chemical pesticides on their soil. But that's not the worst. There's a lot worse.
but this has come like in this
China's the worst.
But this has come in the last 10 or 15 years. I mean, before on our good days, before the revolution.
In fact, the industrial food system has been developing at a quite rapid pace for the last 50 years. And, countries like China, the United States, Brazil, Argentina, Canada are at the top of the list, but UK is actually pretty high up there at number 25, with more than 19,000 tons of chemical pesticides used every year on the soil. 99% of all the fruit and veg, all the food that we produce, has more than 15 different chemicals, residues on the surface of all that food. So that's causing a huge problem with autoimmune problems. Anyway, that's all I wanted to say there.
I just wanted to pick up on Eddie's points earlier, to bring back to what you were saying, Pascal, which is that one of the things that you do with StreetCube is actually provide an opportunity to keep costs low for chefs starting out and experiment. And I know that, I guess it's sometimes a bit lethal in the way that, people vote with their feet. But you do really see quite quickly what works and what doesn't when you're in a street food environment. So perhaps you could talk a little bit more about how you support your chefs in developing and
that's right.
menus.
Well, the StreetCube was designed to be a professional kitchen for easy in and out chef to set up and get going. But actually, we found it's a lot easier now if we just apply the same ethos to using gazebos, and that's even quicker and even easier and even cheaper. It's a pop-up. So, you know, we can sort of, we get a lot of applicants as well. A lot of people, you know, asked to come and join us, and you know, we say, well, okay, yes, really interested, but we'd like you to observe the sustainability ethos. Oh, what's that? Oh, well, you know, we're very much into zero carbon food and trying to reduce the effects of the industrial food system. That means ideally using organic food. Organic food, although it does use some pesticides in the soil, they're a lot more organic pesticides, and there's very few of them as well. So organic food, we know, is much kinder to the soil and is much kinder to us and our health. And so we say to the chefs, yeah, well, you can pretty much cook anything, you can propose anything as long as you can be minimum 30 to 40% organic, 30 to 40% local and seasonal, zero plastic, zero waste. There's a few other things as well. Everybody says, yeah, we'll do it, honest. And then when they come with their menu, we go, well, where are you getting these produce from? And so we have to sort of dig a little deeper into where they're getting their produce from and making sure they are reaching those minimum standards. But yes, Dominique, I mean, to be able to set up a gazebo and try a new food style and then switch it if it's not working is so simple. Mm-hmm. And it's so cost effective as well, because you're paying out, well, I mean, if you're buying your own gazebo, it's about 600 quid if you want a decent one, or you can get a really crappy one for about 300. Then you're sort of, you know, you're looking at developing the menu. Well, it's really only limited by your own experience and imagination. But then to find the organic suppliers, that takes a little bit more investment. So yeah, but I mean, many times I've seen projects start up and we think, well, yes, this is a really good idea. You know, organic pasta, organic Italian menu made with local ingredients. So where do we find those organic tomatoes? Where do we find that organic local basil? And where can we find all these Italian type of ingredients? Well, we can find them. They're a little bit more expensive in parts, but you know, we can, you know, make a genuine menu organic and sustainable, just if we try a little bit harder to source those right ingredients. And then when things don't work, if people say, well, this isn't the right area for organic pasta for some reason, it's not working. We had guys making fresh organic pasta all day long out there in the street, but it wasn't selling. So I said to the guys, you know, what can we do? Do you want to change something? Yes, we'll have a flip. Within a week, they changed the offering to now an organic, sustainable poke. And I know that fish is under a lot of criticism at the moment with Seaspiracy and all those sort of things on Netflix. But actually, we can get local farmed organic salmon, which is very reasonably priced. But the rest of it is all made using local organic produce, and that's working actually really well. So the guys invested about $1,000 or so to start up with. It wasn't working. They changed it within a week. Now it's working fine. So it's a really great way of testing new ideas and giving birth to new creative ideas that are based, you know, around the sustainable food system. And those can develop into, well, you know, we can move them up into a street cube if their offering is really successful, and if they've made a huge success out of what they're doing, then we can give them a street cube. And then after that, now we've spawned 2 new restaurant operators from Street Cube. The Hungry Bedouin, who started up with us when we first opened, now have a restaurant inside the Stratford shopping centre. And Mai Tai, the sustainable Thai chef, has opened a new restaurant across the road at the Ram Quarter. So this is exactly why we developed Street Cube, to give young chefs an opportunity to design more sustainable food ideas that they could develop those and run with them. And I'm delighted about that, because philanthropy is the way that we wanted to go. It's not about huge profit and huge growth, although we do have to pay those bills. You know, it's about the better health for people and planet.
I think what's really nice about that, Pascal, is that you're giving chefs the confidence to start their own restaurant once they already know that what they've developed works. You know, they've been able to experiment while
Yeah.
it's been more flexible.
Yeah, I mean, I was thinking about when Imad was talking, because he had 3 restaurants in Syria, and no fault of his own, that things went belly up. But then he had the confidence that he knew that his menu and his approach and his methods were working. And he had the confidence to start that back up in London, and all to him, because but for a young chef to say, okay, well, I'm going to take the leap of faith and I'm going to start my own restaurant doing this. It's a lot of money. It's a big investment. You've got the premium for the rent. You've got the rent. You've got the staff. You've got the fit out costs. You want to try an idea where there's people mingling, and just try it and see how popular it can be. There's so many elements to starting your own food business, and we find that actually they're a lot more simple than people think. And Eddie was talking about restricting or reducing when he started up, and sort of having his hands tied behind his back slightly with what he wanted to start up with, and then realizing that he could sort of stretch his legs a bit and be a bit more creative with what he wanted to do. It's really just like that with Street Cube and with the pop-up scene, because you think, oh, well, I'm going to do this so intricately and it's going to be like that. Actually, you don't necessarily need it. You just need to grab people's attention. And then you just need to follow up with, a tasting, and then they'll buy from you. If it's keep it simple is the message really in that.
I wanted to ask, off the back of that, we talked a little bit about locations, and obviously you've got a market location and developing more. Before I talk about different locations, I wanted to ask Eddie, who's got a very fixed location, what you think are the benefits of being in a fixed location?
Sure.
Maybe customer loyalty, or you may have other comments on that.
So it's mixed, I would say. Like anything, there's upsides and downsides. The great thing for me was that we were working in the converted bottom floor of our house. So the upside and the downside of that is that no commute, everything is there. You're constantly you're constantly aware of where absolutely everything is up to. The downside of that is how you draw that line and when you switch off from it. And currently I don't have that figured out really. Like, I'm someone that tends to think if there's more time to put into stuff, I will keep putting the time into it. So there's you can easily be still at 1 a.m. in the kitchen and it doesn't even feel like that's an issue because you're in your space, whereas if I was in the city centre in a restaurant space, or if I was commuting back and forth from a pop-up, say, then that sort of, if you're finishing between 1 and 2, you might be like, okay, I need to balance this out. And then the other thing is the other nice advantage, I suppose, is that I can showcase things that that feature on the menu and I want to talk about. So when guests are sat in here, they can see the distilling equipment behind me, which means as I describe the welcome cocktail to them, I can point to that. Or when we have a course with honey on it, I've got beehives in the garden, and I can bring out the course and as I'm starting to talk to them, point to the beehives and say, this is the honey is literally from there.
Some bees out as well with you.
Yeah, totally. Oh, we've not fully had that as an issue yet, but it will. But yeah, that's the other advantage for me, I suppose, is curating the space, I suppose, is the advantage. If it's permanent, you can see other things you want to have on display and things like that. But equally, then you are locked into, and you are limited in terms of I can't expand without moving house, which is quite a significant undertaking.
Yes, I can see that's a limiting factor. Imad, from your perspective, you were just saying before this call about how you're so pleased to have your own kitchen finally.
Yep.
Have you found kind of before there were benefits of being a pop-up and being able to try out different locations, or have you just had to really think very carefully about which location you wanted to open in, and why have you chosen this one now for your final one?
Actually, finding the right location was the most difficult part of it, honestly, from the very beginning, because first of all, I live like far west London, near of Heathrow Airport. But yeah, my audience was always central. So finding somewhere in between or East London, yeah, was like very, very difficult for me at the very beginning. But then sort of it was always either central or somewhat distant, you know, like people can travel easy to. Now, yeah, like if I say, I think most of you doesn't really know where is Ickenham is, where I live. And for people to come over there, it's really difficult, and it would take them time to be there. So finding the right location was very difficult. And this is why we end up in Carnaby Street. I think it's distant to everyone, and it's easy to everyone to reach. So
have you found,
and honestly, sometimes location like this, the spot itself, not only the location, it's sometimes it's oversized or too tiny to have what we're looking for. So for example, our last pop-up in Ibiza, Spain, was enough for 40 people. It was like the right space. It was a very good and like easy to manage. It's not very massive to have a pop-up in there. So yeah, I've been there. I had the restaurants open 24 hours, and it's massive. I prefer to have fun now more, and be somewhere manageable, somewhere where I can meet my customers, where to have a chat with them, and to be free to go out from the kitchen sometimes and talk to them, you know. It's pleased me. So
yes, I can. There was actually a session earlier about experiential dining where they were talking about the best environments for chefs, where you know, just allowing light in the kitchen and having more of an open plan or an open air kitchen makes such a big difference to you know, the well-being of the chefs.
yeah.
So yes, I can totally
Definitely.
see that. Have you got any tips for chefs, for example, that might be starting out in terms of negotiating leases? I'm thinking, you know, pop-ups or permanent, because that must be quite a skill, I would have thought, the actual negotiation process.
I think it's a good time to start right now, to be honest, just because people wanted to go out again and wanted to socialize again. But starting with the restaurant straight away, I think it will be like a little bit tricky. I encourage everyone to start with the pop-up or supper clubs, to ask people what they think about the whole process. Be friendly with the people, ask them for their opinion, and yeah, be there for them, to be honest. I think this is the best way to start. I do encourage everyone to be part of rebuilding the economy, if we could say so, because we needed this, honestly. There is a lot of jobs on risk right now, and if everyone will give up, it will be a huge problem. I think if you lost a business or a job or whatever you lost during the pandemic, it's not a real loss. Losing someone is a huge difference. I have no advice to someone who lose some, like a loved one. But losing a job, it's not a huge difference. It's not a huge problem. You can do it again. You did this previously, and you can do it again now. Start all over again, and be brave. if you're thinking right, if you have a good plan, just be brave and do it.
Very good advice, Imad. And I think very heartfelt as well. So yeah, I think we should all be following your lead on that one. I'm just and so if anyone has any questions, please do put them in the chat. I've got a couple more I want to ask, and then I'll open it up for any questions that we've got. What I wanted to ask Pascal is, I know that you have also got mobile cubes, and I was thinking, you know, that could be something really interesting for chefs to try out different locations. For, you know, they might have, maybe their organic Italian doesn't work in Wandsworth, but if they've got a mobile cube, they can try it on different locations, and that can also help with location finding. What are your thoughts on that? Have you used it at all in that way?
Yeah, well, actually, we don't have the mobile cube just yet. We're working on a prototype, yeah, I mean, the cubes themselves are semi-permanent, so they can be picked up and put anywhere. And actually, what we want to do is put more across London, you know, and we're looking at more sites. And once we, you know, we're a little bit more developed, yeah, I will be working on that mobile solution. But yeah, I mean, it is really quite a thing that types of food are quite audience specific. So what works in one area, you know, won't work in another, and vice versa. I mean, that's as a pop-up, you know, until you become established, I suppose. And when you start sort of winning your customers, and there's so many, as I said before, I'm pretty sure, as a chef, you know, having worked in many restaurants around the world, you know, selling food is the same thing, really. It's about the presentation and about the description and about, you know, what you project as, with quality, and how you communicate that and connect with your audience. So whether it, you know, we do pasta, organic pasta in Wandsworth, and then change it or put it somewhere else, yeah, it's very doable. But at the heart of all these things is marketing, I guess, and connection with your audience. And that's why I found in America, because, you know, people drive everywhere and the cities are so big, you know, you won't see many restaurants like with a name or like it's quite fascinating. You wouldn't see like a company called WH Smith's, you know, no one knows what the hell that is, WH Smith's, if you're just passing it. Like, what does that do? In America, it's like, we sell burgers. It's like burgers, chops, pies, you know, this is what you get, because people are so transient, they're moving around all the time. And we found that specifically with Wandsworth, because there's a lot of people passing by, a lot of traffic there, it's no good to have like a tiny menu. You need to make it so bold and so obvious. Falafel, you know, that's what we sell. And that makes a lot more sense, because people, you know, can just identify with that straight away. We've got their attention, and then you make the connection. So yeah, Dominique, I mean, when we do have the mobile cubes developed, I'll give you a shout, but we haven't got them yet. But yeah.
Sorry, I thought I saw a trailer on your Instagram feed recently. I must have...
Yeah. Well, we've got one. It's a horse box, actually. It's not a street cube. But yes, it is a mobile. It's a horse box mobile.
Okay.
But yeah, I really do want to develop the mobile street cube, because I think that shipping container design is so iconic to our brand. And so I'm working on it.
Okay. I've seen a question come in, and I just wanted to wrap up before we go on to the questions with perhaps maybe, you know, 3 very short pieces of advice from each of you, as to kind of what for any chef starting out, what would be the 3 things they should remember? Just kind of short, memorable chunks. Who wants to start? Should have given a prior warning for this.
Good. Keep it simple.
Yeah.
make your message clear to your audience, and be open as often as possible.
Excellent.
I have to agree, so that's it.
well said then, Pascal. Eddie, anything to add?
I mean, the things that have worked for me, and I would hope would work for other people then, are to, like, if you follow what you're really passionate about, that's going to work because you're going to stay engaged in it. And when you communicate that to guests, it will be genuine. You know, if you tell them about a dish and you're excited about it, that'll really come across.
Yeah.
And starting stuff, doing stuff, like, it's great to sit and think and plan and stuff like that, but sometimes you've just got to start, and then you can figure out what's working and stuff afterwards. But like, just getting something going, you know.
Great advice. You can spend too long just planning it out and then find that your plan actually doesn't work, and you wasted all of that time.
Yeah, sometimes the most simplest things like would just really work. Like, keep it simple.
Yeah. So the question here from Kieran is, how do you manage the mental, emotional challenges of opening a business? Very, very good question, Kieran. Emma, do you want to pick up on that one first?
You don't. You can't manage it, honestly. Honestly, it's very
honest
stressful.
Answer.
Yeah, it's really stressful. But it's part of the process, to be honest. I think it's part of the process. So it's fine to have it. You need to be emotional. You will have ups and downs the whole way. Even after you open, even whenever you're gonna have it. This is a business at the very end, and it's not always gonna go as it's planned. There is always something to catch up, but at least start and keep it simple. Things will flow up. Maybe it will be much better than what you accepted if you really believe on what in your product and in what you are passionate about. Maybe it will be much better than what you accepted from the first place. When actually something Eddie were saying just a minute ago about the fancy plates and stuff like this. When we start in my first pop-up restaurant in Columbia Road, I do pro an extra plate from my own home because I couldn't afford anymore, to be honest. And this was something not to be feel shame of it. It was I just want to start somehow, and from the income of the very first day, we bought something to continue our pop-up. So starting something, definitely you're gonna have stress, but don't think too much about it. Just start as easy and simple as you can. Right now in this pop-up restaurant, we have one product to serve, a falafel. That's it. It's a composable plate having a flatbread, 6 pieces of falafel, a decent amount of salad, hummus, and that's it. That's it. But I do know that I'm serving an original falafel. I know people will love it. That's it. Keep it simple as much as you can. You will have as less stress as you can.
I think Imad, I would just add to that as a business owner myself, albeit not a restaurateur. One of the things that I've learned is that separating yourself from your business is really important to managing that stress. You know, you often kind of get so involved in your business that you feel like your success is tied up with the success of your business. And one of the things that this conversation has really highlighted is how much we need to experiment to get it wrong first before you're going to get it right. And if you feel like you need to get it right first time, because otherwise you won't be successful. That's completely not going to be helpful. And I think, the other thing to think about is that business is not just about you. It's everything around you that influences that success. You don't have full control over it, and your case is a classic example of that. I mean, you can't control the fact that your restaurants get bombed. That's not your fault. You can't tie your own success up with that, and that's obviously a very extreme example. But the same is true of any business, that there will be external factors like a pandemic that are going to influence your success, and you have to separate your own success and your own sense of value from the business itself. Is anything you Pascal or Eddie want to add to that question?
Mental emotional challenges, I think, are just part of life, and I think it's a consequence of overthinking a situation and maybe worrying too much and assuming that one thing is going to happen when in reality it doesn't. And so the mental emotional challenges of opening a business, I think, are kind of part of it, and I think a certain element of that is healthy. But it's when you maybe try and do too much. And so that message to keep it simple, really, I can't say that loud enough. And you'll find that actually things you can adapt and things can change, and you can adapt on the spot, and you can find solutions to the problems that you never imagined that would pop up. I mean, for example, when I built these street cubes, I loaded them onto the back of a crane of a HIAB, and I transported them from the docks in Southampton to Wandsworth. Didn't think for a minute that they would distort along the journey. And then when I had the crane pick them up and put them down in the middle of the piazza, I couldn't open the doors. I had chefs waiting to get in and go, well, I need to start cooking, mate. What's going on? I'm like, hold on a second. I haven't sorted in a while. I had to get a locksmith in. I went to drill the locks out and refit the lock. I mean, it was a complete nightmare. And yeah, but we fixed it. And that's the thing, you can't preempt what's going to happen. And stress and, emotional challenges are part of everyday life. And I think that if you overthink something, you're going to invent problems that actually don't arise. But then you find you actually really are capable of dealing with most things when they pop up. And so you get over it. And that's, you learn on the job, I think. And from one day to the next, you think, oh shit, well, that didn't work today. Tomorrow, I'm going to do something different. And then we're always doing that at Street Cube. I mean, things don't work one day to the next. So, we have to be ready to confront those issues and not worry about them too much. Actually, it's not the end of the world. And I know that in a restaurant, as hospitality people, oriented towards helping people enjoy themselves, yeah, we do freak out at like, oh my God, service is going to happen at 6 o'clock. I haven't got anything ready. But actually, in French, they call it the système D, and it's called the système de merde. And if you demerde yourself, you're digging yourself out of the shit. As a chef, you start up in the shit and you learn how to dig your way out of it. And that's called System D. And as chefs, we're just used to sort of dealing with all these things that come your way, and finding a solution to it. So yeah, emotional and mental challenges, yeah, you deal with it, but it's part of it.
Perfect, thank you. That was very interesting. I didn't know about the demerding system.
Demerde quoi.
What about you, Eddie? A final comment before we close.
Sure. In terms of health and stress, I try and work in as organized a way as possible. I will try and organize as much as error out of any of the systems as I can, but I'm still aware that the days doing the menu on my own and the days that I'm open are inevitably take a physical and a mental toll, just because you are full on, you know, a long days, at least 16 hours, if not longer. So I try to make sure that the days then that I do have a bit more control, I'm very conscious of trying to make sure that I get some exercise and get enough sleep and eat okay on those days where I can do that, because I know you need that reserve then for the days that you are going all out, and remembering that remembering that you love it and that's the thing that keeps you coming back to it, you know.
Perfect. Thank you very much, and thank you to all of you for speaking and for joining the session. It was really interesting discussion. I think the keep it simple message actually was very interesting, relating to the food waste session that was earlier this today. I'm pretty sure they were discussing how simple menus also tend to have less food waste as well. So there's an added benefit there. And I just want to finish with a question that came up in one of the earlier sessions around integrating your restaurant to the local community, which is kind of, what is the purpose really of your restaurant for your community? Is it, you know, that there's a lot that restaurants can offer beyond just serving food, and that can actually help you differentiate what you're doing, and help to attract customers too. So just one to think about, and that session is recorded, so if you want to go back and see some of the things they were discussing there about, you know, different purposes and things you can offer the community, there's some really good ideas there as well. So thank you very much, and see you all tomorrow for the second day.